John.
Well, welcome everyone. Great to see you. I rarely get to see the readers of our site, so I really love these events because it gets me the chance to meet all of you one-on-one. Throughout the day, I'll be wandering around, and I really want to see all of you and hear your stories. There will be no handicapping today, but you should have an opportunity really to explore what the MBA is about, what the opportunity costs are involved in getting it, as well as the actual cost, how one program differs from another. This is an information-only event. You're not going to be evaluated, so feel free to talk freely and honestly with the different representatives from, I think there are 28 schools that will be here. Actually more if you include the deans and the admission directors who are on our panels. And it's a great chance even to get to know each other. Hopefully all of you will be entering a great school not too far in the distant future, and I hope that this helps you make an important choice for your life. Picking an MBA school and getting into an MBA program is a marathon journey for many people, and most of you, I believe, are at the very start of that journey. It's a time to really rethink what you want to do with your life. And, you know, beyond the stuff on the website to talk about the MBA as a transformative experience, well, guess what? It is a transformative experience if you get into the right program that's right for you. So we are really eager to help you make that decision, not only today, but come to the site frequently and learn more about the different programs, how they compare with each other, and what's involved in getting an MBA, and what you're going to learn. It's going to open your life to all kinds of new possibilities. We are going to start today with a terrific panel. We have 5 business school deans from 5 of the best schools in the world. And I want to talk to them a little bit about how the MBA has evolved, how it's likely to change in the future, what you can expect from it. I want to talk a little bit about the criticism of the degree and hear what the deans have to say about that. I think I want to talk a little bit about what you can expect so that at least vicariously on this stage today, you can begin to experience what an MBA degree is really all about. Matt, thank you.
One final word. Of course, the business schools will be looking at your academic background, your professional performance, but if you noted at the bottom of your resume that you played the guitar, that could be one of those tipping points that just catches the eye. Now, I'm just saying that for one of the business school deans that is on this panel, and I'll let you guess which one, we brought the guitar. So as we welcome the 5 deans, Matt, Scott, Sohail, Rich, Doug, if we can have you up on stage.
Any place. Any place? Yeah. That's not for... No. Yeah, how does that? Talent show? Just making sure.
So who do we give the guitar to? I'm just saying. I learned this of you just the other day, Rich, and it's there if you need it.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
You know, I just want to put it out there that I saw Rich playing the guitar, and even though I am not an alum of Berkeley, I was so impressed by it, I actually contributed to their alumni fund. That is a true story, okay?
So that's the secret.
Whatever it takes.
So let's start with Rich. Rich Lyons is the dean of UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business. And you know, I'm going to dispense with talking all about their PhDs and their incredible careers. Suffice it to say, they're all brilliant. They're all leaders of tremendous schools. And if you want to look at their bios, look them up. I'm not going to waste any of our time with that. So, Rich, welcome. Next to Rich is Doug Shackelford. He is at UNC's Keenan Flagler Business School. And I think one of my favorite memories is when Doug was in charge of launching their online MBA program. And he gave me this great quote. I think he told the dean who told him he was going to run this online program, you know, if this works out, it's going to be really good, but if it doesn't, you're going to be hung in effigy. Luckily, it worked out. And in fact, the online program now has an enrollment of over 1,000 and is larger than their full-time residential program. And then next to Doug, we have Rohit Verma, who is the Dean of External Affairs at Cornell's College of Business, which is the newly merged 3 schools on the Cornell campus. And I'm hoping we're going to get some really good insights about Cornell's New York City play, which is pretty interesting, and a whole new thing that's going on at Cornell, where Cornell has made a major bet on New York City, and we'll have a tremendous campus that opens up actually right around the corner, right? This fall.
Right. D-minus 6 weeks.
There you go. Okay. And then we have Matt Slaughter, who is the Dean of Dartmouth College's Tuck School of Business. It's often been said that Tuck School is really, it's a tremendously intimate environment in Hanover, New Hampshire. And it's been said that their MBA program is like the Haagen-Dazs, okay? Because they so thoroughly specialize in the MBA. There's no evening program. Until only recently, they had no executive MBA program. They do very little executive education, no undergraduate education. So, I mean, one feature of the Tuck School is almost his total and complete dedication on the full-time MBA. And then we have the youngest member of our panel, and I know he looks as young as you guys out there, and that's kind of deceiving. Scott DeRue, who is the Dean of Michigan's Ross School of Business. Scott, we have had the pleasure of acknowledging you as one of the best teachers in the world in the business school classroom, and Scott's been dean now for, is it a little
51 weeks.
51 weeks, okay. We're 1 week shy of the 1-year anniversary? Wow, how cool is that? So welcome all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit about the history of the MBA and how it's evolved. You know, Tuck was the first school to actually offer a graduate degree in business. And if I have my history lesson right, Harvard Business School was the first to actually offer an MBA. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
1900 was the first graduate degree. The graduating class was 4 people at Tuck. Early days were a little, here and there. Class of 1904 had 1 student that graduated. So then it all came together.
Wow. And then, of course, we went through the heyday in the 1980s and 90s where there was tremendous growth of the MBA and the MBA's popularity, particularly as it related to the 2-year residential program. And you saw the expansion of the degree all over the world. Where are we now? How has the MBA evolved? How has it changed? And what's it looking like? Or is it a healthy degree? I mean, there are signs that there's less interest in the 2-year MBA. What's your perspective on that, Matt?
Well, I would say there's no better time. We've been around 117 years, and we've innovated all along the way to get here. There's no better time to get an MBA than right now, actually. I think if you look at our world here in 2017, it is a dynamic, global, innovative economy. It is a challenging one in some ways around the world, and I think the skill set that we provide in the MBA world at Tuck, it's a personal, connected, and transformative focus. Those are our core strategic values. The kind of education you can get today to address the complexity and opportunities of the world that is out there, I don't think there's ever been a better time to get an MBA.
Rich, do you think the MBA is as valuable as it's ever been?
I think it's more valuable than it's ever been. I think if you look at sort of the increase in real salaries and compensation, if that's the way one wants to judge it, certainly of the top schools over the last 15 or 20 years, there's no question about it. You can do another layer of math and sort of correct for the increasing costs, which have been significant. But I think at the top schools, it's like most talent markets. It's a star market, and things are looking good.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the ROI, whether you look at it in terms of the salaries or the payback periods on any debt that might exist, is still quite favorable. And to me, market demand speaks loudest. And at many of the top schools, applications are up, not down.
Right.
I mean, our applications this year for the full-time MBA program were the highest we've seen in 15 years.
Wow.
And so from a market demand perspective, that tells you where there's value.
You know, a lot of people look at the cost, the actual price tag on an MBA when they go to the website, and they see, pretty significant prices on this degree. But what they don't see is the amount of scholarship aid that many schools are providing. Doug, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe this sort of 2-tier pricing system that's emerged among the schools?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us are offering fellowship dollars in competition for the best students. And that's just, that's a natural thing going on. We're also offering fellowship dollars to try to get a certain type of portfolio for student body. And so I'm sure all these schools, as well as those schools, are looking for a certain mixture. We oftentimes talk about, we're not trying to get the best students, we're trying to get the best student body.
Right.
I would agree with that. I think one of the biggest fundraising goals is for scholarships and fellowships for the master's program of various type.
Right.
And I would add, if I may, especially for all the prospective students here, yes, you definitely want to think about that next step back in the labor market when you think about the near-term financial rate of return on your investment. But you're making an investment in yourself, and ideally you're making an investment that's for your lifetime. For the large majority of you, this will be the last formal education that you have, unless the spirit moves you to go to dental school or medical school or something. So
let's hope not.
That's okay. But how the spirit moves you, this is an investment for your lifetime. So you really want to think about what's a place that's going to allow you to grow and thrive, not just in the 2 years that you're in a full-time program, but in the many decades beyond.
Yeah, and it's not just the education. You're entering into a network, a community that's for a lifetime. Many prospective students at all of our schools are using the full-time MBA as a career switching platform. What better career switching platform than the full-time MBA? And you can't get that anywhere else.
Doug, you talk about the 7-year MBA, right?
Yeah, we've started talking about it. We have a 7-year MBA. Now, we only have 2 years in the program. Don't worry, if you come to Chapel Hill, we're not going to give you classes for 7 years.
Right. This isn't a ploy to get more tuition, right?
No.
Okay, good.
But what we have started talking about is the first 5 years you're out of the program, you're going to face a lot of major decisions. Most of our graduates do. You're probably going to change jobs. You're going to probably have opportunities to move here, there, all sorts of things. We have a lot of things we can do to help our graduates. And we want to stay closely in contact with our alums during those first 5 years out. So it becomes, in our minds, we're making a 7-year commitment to the students to come to join us. And that's why we started talking about the 7-year MBA, because this first 5 years out are really critical years. You have a good first 5 years after your 2-year education, and the next 45 years are likely to be really phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, I was going to add that, even though you mentioned earlier that perhaps the biggest growth in MBA programs were in 80s and 90s, I think today's MBA is not same as the 80s and 90s MBA. I think if you look at the curriculum, the way things are taught, the relevance of practical issues, the way people collaborate, it's completely different. It's a change in mindset, right? And so I think that's the kind of education you don't get with other degree program. And I think all of us can say that in our curriculum, we have that element of transformation embedded.
That's true. And that includes the advent of emphasis on data analytics, which has become a very big trend, the impact overall on technology, which pervades every discipline and every industry in the world, more emphasis on experiential learning, developing entrepreneurial mindsets, all the work done on leadership development, which is a whole new phase. I mean, the amount of time devoted to personal development in MBA programs is off the charts today.
That's right.
That's right.
Really off the charts. Yep. Now, Rich, you have been a person who predicted that technology would drive sweeping and disruptive change through the business school landscape. I forget the actual number of the schools that you said were going to go out of business not all that long ago. Do you still think that?
So let me put that remark in the frame that it was delivered in. So I'm an economist, right? And if you take a disciplined look at this, right, we are a quite fragmented industry. There's no question about that. When we think about the AACSB and what they've done with inventorying the number of business programs in the world. A few years ago, they said there are over 10,000 business programs. In fragmented industries that are undergoing change, a turnover rate of 5% per year is rather common, actually. 10 years of 5% turnover is 50% turnover. And you add on to that a lot of change in terms of online and technology. And those kinds of numbers are not crazy. So that prediction was never that the top 10 or top 20 or top 50 or top 100.
Right.
Against 10,000, the top 100 is 1%.
Yes.
So this was really a comment about the industry, like an
Yes.
industrial organization economist. It was not about these rarefied institutions that we're talking about here.
Right.
And
Agreed.
so I do stand by the prediction, I think, but you really need to understand it in that larger context. There's an enormous management education industry out there, and it is undergoing quite intensive change. And we're in like the third inning of some of these rapid technological changes.
As an economist, I'll echo what Rich says, and I'll add one other thing. It's important to keep in mind our MBA programs, you students are vital, and yet it's also the companies involved as well. So that in some sense, the demand for the educational services we provide is kind of joint between you and the companies that you're going to match with. And I think what's remarkable is we just see the number of companies who are deepening their recruiting relationships with us and the new companies that are coming in, especially in technology, broadly defined, as John mentioned. There's so many new kind of emerging spaces in the global economy. So is that going to mean every single business school on the planet is able to take advantage of that? Probably not. And yet I think a lot of our schools are ones where we're moving and innovating in ways that meet what are the interests of you, the students, and the companies and organizations that you want to match with.
Yeah. I think this point about talent flows is actually critical, because if you ask companies around the world what's one of the biggest challenges you have, it's something to do with the talent pipeline. And so among the top set of schools, and when I say top, I mean a pretty broad set, we are seeing a deepening of corporate relationships at the business schools looking for top talent. And that is feeding down to greater demand from students. What's happening is among the 10,000, that's not necessarily the case. Right? Because companies are looking at it from an ROI perspective as well. They want to go to the places where they can acquire the best talent. And that's putting stress and pressure on the 10,000 to develop an ROI that makes sense for the tuition they charge.
Right.
And if you cannot justify the tuition you charge with that ROI, you're going to get that churn.
Right. Doug, how is technology changing what you do at school?
It's been a big deal for us. You mentioned our online MBA program, which actually is a describer I don't like. I don't like the word online. It's really a blended program that uses technology. The way I think about it is technology has rolled every industry. If you talk about the 80s or the 90s, if we walked out this door and walked out and it was 1980 or 1990, I'm not sure many of us could even get across the street. The world's changed so much. But in higher education, frankly, you could roll back 50 years and walk into a classroom and a lot of things look the same. PowerPoint slides are probably one of the biggest changes. So what we've really thought a lot about at our place is how can we use technology to enhance the learning of the students and to expand access. Access is a really big deal at UNC. We were the first public university. So we're always thinking in terms of how do we bring education to as many people as possible without compromising quality. And so in that mindset, that's how we started what is MBA at UNC, which is an online program. We've just also used that with our residential program. So an example is flipping classes, which is a term used for taking the lecture out of the class. Frankly, I never liked giving a lecture. I certainly didn't like giving the same lecture 4 times in a row. I've done that before. And as a student, I never liked listening to somebody drone on, like I'm doing right now. So, we've just taken a lot of that and just put it into a computer. You can watch the lecture before you come to class. Then class becomes very interactive. And in fact, it's got a big effect on faculty, because faculty are no longer performers and actors and actresses. Faculty now have got to interact on a human basis. So we increasingly think of terms of let the machines do the one-way communication, let humans do what humans do best, which is interact one-on-one with people. And I think if talking about, Rich, the third inning, I think in technology we're probably in the top of the first inning. And we are all going to see education, whether you're talking kindergarten or you're talking the PhD, the whole thing's going to be completely altered by technology. And I think it's over a very short period, next 5, 10, 15 years, everything we see in education is going to be radically changed. Yeah. And of course, we're seeing right in the middle of the ed tech area in which we're seeing a lot of that change occurring.
Indeed. Yeah. And Rich, you're here at the epicenter of the technological revolution in the world, one of the most dynamic economies in the United States for sure. Is tech changing some of the things that you're doing at Haas?
Oh yeah, it's changing what all of us are doing. I mean, really fundamental ways. The flipped classroom, we're all doing that. I mean, UNC's done a lot of it. We're all doing that. We're changing the way we deliver executive education so that it can be cascaded down into companies. We're all doing that. It's also driving us kind of to think even more about coding classes and science in business and building dual degree programs with engineering and science and STEM and so forth. And business analytics. So it's really got a much larger frame on it. When you have CEOs of airlines saying that, you know, we are a transportation company, you know, or a technology company with wings, you realize this isn't just the technology industry. It is
Right.
hard to think about any industry without getting a handle on technology.
Right. And Ro, you have Cornell Tech in
Yeah.
New York. Talk a little bit about how the business school intends to use that campus and what you're already doing in New York City.
Yeah, definitely. The Cornell Tech campus, which as I mentioned, will be officially open about 6 weeks from now. It's probably the most ambitious university project taken in the last 100 years, I would say, at least by any major university.
What's the price tag on that?
Quite high, actually. Yeah.
That's all the time we have. Thanks for coming.
So I can tell you one thing, how Cornell was able to get that agreement from Mayor Bloomberg when he offered the challenge. Stanford and Cornell, they were the two finalists.
I remember that.
Right, and one big difference was that one of the alums of the hotel school at Cornell, Chuck Feeney, he offered $300 million to fund that in small part, and that made a big difference. It also showed the commitment of the alum and the program to do that. But to your question, I think why I say it's a fundamentally a major innovation in colleges because it fundamentally changes the way we teach and deliver education. And if you allow me, I can just give a little background. We all have programs where we collaborate with different disciplines. You know, we have programs with engineering, with with the business and medicine and so on. The big difference is that these are programs in physically different buildings on campuses, typically. You know, and you have faculty which are physically located differently, and we try our best to let them connect. Cornell Tech fundamentally changes that. So what happens there is, from the student perspective, an MBA student, a master's in engineering student, a master's in law student, they will have some part of their curriculum which they do in their own cohort, but then a big part of their curriculum is together. They spend about 30 to 40% of their time working on a real digital technology-based product together. And they are it's in a studio setting. So some of you, if you take a design course, you have to take design studios. Think of that in the business context. That's what they do. So that's the curriculum on Roosevelt Island campus. Faculty, they are fully integrated with each other. There are no different department-based locations for faculty. They don't have private offices, kind of like you see in Silicon Valley, I suppose. They sit together, they have to get tenure in their home discipline and in Cornell Tech. So imagine trying to recruit a faculty in operations in my area who also need to get tenure in a department of engineering.
Right.
And so the university has gone through a major effort to create that, I guess, resource. But then how it translates to the MBA program is that the campus opens. We have full-time residential MBA program in Ithaca. We don't think of Cornell Tech and Ithaca as two different campuses now. There will be curriculum where students will go back and forth between two campuses. So some of the immersions which Johnson School is known for will happen more and more in New York. The tech campus students come to Ithaca, they intermingle, and so on. So I think that's the big excitement we have, is that really bring together very dispersed disciplines and then make them work together. And it's a big change for us faculty, honestly. You know, we have to evolve quite rapidly to basically catch up. And that's what we're working on.
Right, great. Now, Matt, you've described Dartmouth as sort of the base camp for your business experience at Tuck. Talk a little bit about this notion of it being the base camp and you sending out your students into the world in different places for other experiences to then bring back to this base camp.
Sure. So the base camp metaphor is partly, if you come visit, we're in the foothills of the lovely White Mountains of New Hampshire. So there's a physicality to our place. And we have a distinct scale at Tuck of the top schools. We purposely, intentionally, given our strategies, we focus on a real trust-based learning community that's personal, connected, and transformative. So we take advantage of that physical location. I'll give an example. We have, Rich knows him, Ken French, one of the world's godfathers on asset pricing and capital markets. What's great about being at Tuck with Ken is not you can take his investments class and be at the frontier of understanding asset prices on the planet. Ken loves to go for bike rides. And so he'll take his students out riding. You take investments in the fall with Ken, in the fall foliage, and you're able to, with your classmates, and with Ken and other faculty that love riding with Ken, like Leslie Robinson, to have just a great experience on a weekend and talk about those kinds of things while you take advantage of our location. And yet, from our base camp, we are connected to all these forces of diversity and technology that we're talking about here. So more and more, and one of the innovation points that Rohit made earlier, what we do at Tuck today, our students are coming and going from our base camp. A lot of students, dozens of students, even before orientation starts for first years, will come to the Bay Area here and visit ed tech and healthcare tech and clean tech firms. So we use our location. Technology allows us to radically do things different in our classrooms, but still from a foundation of that trust and teamwork that's essential to how we do things. So in our core classes, the way we use asynchronous technology to enrich the learning, the span of electives of computer science and Thayer School of Engineering faculty at Dartmouth, because they love coming and teach with us at Tuck. So there's all kinds of blending and new electives that we're offering in our MBA program. So Tuck is a base camp not just for the rest of Dartmouth's campus, but literally for the world of technology and for things like Tuck Go. We're global in the sense that now to earn an MBA at Tuck, every MBA candidate has to take at least one of a suite of classes that our faculty offer, where we take students, sometimes with a client on a project, that are held literally all around the planet. So in March, we had students that were in Myanmar, China, India, South Africa, Argentina, just about 10 other countries, so in just March for 2 to 3 week learning experiences. So there's a lot of ebb and flow from our wonderful base.
Now, there's an interesting connection between the man that you succeeded, Paul Danos, and Scott.
Yeah.
Because Paul used to be at Michigan, and I'm going to bring this up because Paul was a person who was instrumental in the creation of the MAP program, which was one of the early experiential learning opportunities at a business school, and now every school is really pouring on experiential learning. So tell me how it's evolving. How do you see this whole idea of action learning expanding in the future in maybe different ways and simply having a higher percentage of the actual learning occur that way?
Yeah, I mean, we're on a mission to reinvent the business school experience, the student experience around experiential. We want every student who walks through our doors to be able to start a real company, invest real money in real assets, advise real companies on real issues. This past year, we had 167 consulting projects in 25 countries. Over half of those 167 projects were outside the United States. And many of our students are interested in consulting in some way. And the next evolution of that, so our consulting is essentially our MAP program. And that started in 1991. We just celebrated its 25th anniversary. It's something we're very proud of. But we're always looking to see what's next. And what's next for us is we're actually going to start building businesses inside the business school that our students run. And if you want to be a marketing and brand manager, what better way to learn how to do that than to work in a business where you are the marketing and brand management team, and you're working with our faculty, you're working with alumni, you're working with executives from companies, and you're actually responsible for real results. So a good example is we partnered this spring with one of the fastest growing luxury retail brands in the United States. And our students, the CEO is an alum of ours, he's on my board, and I painted a picture of this, what I call this living business concept, where we start building these businesses, and that's the laboratory for learning. And without hesitation, Tom said, Scott, I'll put in a little bit of money, I'll put in some people, you build an organization of students, they'll report directly to him, so they report directly to the CEO, and they are responsible for designing, launching, and operating this company's next business unit on an ongoing basis. And then students may stay in it for multiple semesters, they may stay in it for just one semester, and then we essentially build an ongoing business that our students are running in partnership with leading companies around the world.
And they're involved in every discipline in that business?
Exactly. So in that particular business, there was a marketing brand management function, there's a supply chain function, there's the corporate finance, accounting back office, and our students, depending on their interest, essentially apply, just like you would for an internship or otherwise, to be in that business. And then we wrap the business with the education. So our faculty are in there, not running the business, but they're working with you to take the content that you learned in the core curriculum and understand how that's being applied in this business. We've got alumni who are in mentoring and coaching the students. We've got the executives from the company who are, in effect, the primary decision makers, but they're working with you. And so we're wrapping the lived experience of running these businesses and working in these teams with the education, the mentorship, the coaching that you need to get the most out of it. To me, that's the next big evolution in experiential education in business schools.
How scalable is something like that?
So we'll have 3 by the fall, we'll have 6 by the spring. In 2 years, we'll have about a dozen. And we'll create the portfolio such that it mirrors our students' interest, right? So we have a lot of students who are interested in social enterprises. So one of the next ones that we're building is a social enterprise looking at affordable housing and building communities. And in that one, we'll bring in students from the policy school, we'll bring in students from social work, and they'll be part of the organization. In the luxury retail brand, we have to make the product somehow. So we've got the supplier, but now we have students from design and engineering. You can see how that would all fit together. We want about a dozen of these, and if you think about any of these businesses hosting 20 to 25 students, you quickly get to a scale of 200, 250 students. Ask me 2 years from now if we're there, but I fully expect we will be. And we're working with really large companies down to high-growth, early-stage startups. So it's pretty exciting.
Can I add to that?
Yeah,
I think we all have the STEP program, but you guys are clearly leading this effort, so congratulations on this.
Thank you.
In Cornell, we have these immersion programs for MBA program. That has been one of the core component of MBA program right from the beginning. But the immersion programs are basically where you take a semester, where instead of taking series of 4 or 5 classes, you just take one immersion, and you immerse yourself into that particular topic. And that has been the biggest growth area.
Is that right?
Yeah, so we have immersions in sustainability, digital tech, entrepreneurship, marketing, and it mirrors kind of what you're saying. So I see that as a trend.
Yeah, I think that's
a good positive trend.
And it links back to the earlier conversation around technology.
Yeah.
I was in London recently, and one of the reporters from the Financial Times asked me about technology, and I gave the analogy of the music industry, right? So historically, we used to buy, they came on vinyl, 8-track, cassette. We'll get to CDs.
No one here knows what an
CDs, right?
8-track is. No one knows.
Yeah, right. If you know the pencil joke, you know how old you are. We paid $17 for the 2 songs we wanted, right, for that bundle. And then in 2003, iTunes came along, and it disaggregated the bundle such that you didn't have to pay $17. You could pay, at that time, $1.99 just for the 2 songs that you wanted. And technology is beginning to do that in higher ed.
Yeah.
Right? It's modularizing the experience such that if you just want this module or that module, you can consume it as such. And then in 2008, 2009, things like Pandora, Spotify, and others came along and essentially streamed the content. And if you're willing to listen to a few ads, you could consume that content for free. Right? We have 5 million online learners at Michigan right now. 5 million. And the majority of those, over 90%, consume the content for free. Mm-hmm. We essentially are running our own Pandora. Right? And so, in my opinion, like the music industry, the only high-growth segment of the music industry in the past decade has been live entertainment and concerts. And I think what you hear from us is the experiential side of why would you come to a campus? What can you get there that you can't simply consume? That is the experience that we're trying to curate and create for students that you can't get anywhere else. And all of these schools and many others are doing some pretty innovative work in this space around what do the experiences look like going forward.
I would stress, every one of you, the phone that you have in your pocket literally has more computing power than what put people on the moon. So think about your education. You have access to near infinite amounts of information at near zero cost. So think about what's going to be a school that is going to be the best match for the kind of learning environment when you're with other people, great faculty, great alumni. What's distinctive about our campuses is the economics, if I may. The value of a trust-based learning community, whatever that's going to mean to you, goes up, not down, in this amazing technology world that we have, right? So the world of Pandora and all these other things. So be real intentional to think about what's the kind of learning community that's going to inspire you as a person, that's going to animate you for the kind of business next step that you want to undertake. That's how you should really be framing, I think, your decision about what's the right place to go for business education.
Great point.
Yeah, if I can build on both those, I think, Scott, your analogy about music is spot on. And I think this is spot on. You know, one of the things that we've started talking about is wherever the word imagine exists, we want to replace with experience. And I can say as a professor for many years, I've oftentimes walked into classroom and said, so imagine you're in front of a board and you're trying to make a pitch for your investment for your particular thing. Right. Imagine. And one day I thought to myself, you know, I might as well be saying, imagine you're a duck sitting on a pond. You know, that feels just about as real as some of these things I'm saying. So what I think we're trying to do is replace experience for imagine. Because Siri or Alexa or whoever it is your favorite friend, they know everything. And frankly, we can't give you information that you can't get from those sources. What we can give you is some amalgamation of knowledge and some connection points that you may not be able to get anywhere else. And then a connection with your classmates, which is something we haven't really talked about yet. That connection with classmates and then alumni for the rest of your life, that puts you in a different place. We had a little alumni gathering here last night, and I was speaking to a prospective student, and I said, you know, if you go to an MBA program and you leave with 5 people that for the rest of your life you can pick up the phone at any time and call them, and they will give you frank and honest advice about what your next move should be career-wise, your investment in the MBA program was infinitely valuable. If somehow you left with 7 or 10, well, you just consider it all gravy. But if you had 5 people that you get so close to, and they know you that well, that, you know, you got that kind of advice. So, you know, don't undervalue the community that you're signing up with when you get in that.
Yeah, but if I could, I mean, this is obviously an animating theme for all of us, right? Because we feel this pace of change, and being part of that is an important part of the experience of being in the program. I'm going to say it was 10 years ago. It may have been more than that. One of our alums is the CEO of Adobe. Shantanu Narayan is his name. And he kept using this word SaaS, right? The SaaS transformation, SaaS this, SaaS that. Now, all of you know that term, right? Software as a service. But part of what is very clear to all of us is that we're going into an education as a service world. And the idea being that, look, our alumni networks of every one of these great schools are a really important part of what we deliver if you choose us. That's always been true. But part of the get for an alum of all of our schools going forward will be those booster shots of content, the modularized content that we can deliver when you need it. And that's going to be part of the bargain. And people are going to start to say, I need to see that before I choose you, and all the other stuff. That's an as-a-service kind of a business model. We will all be giving MBA degrees 10 years from now. But the as-a-service part of what we're doing is getting bigger and bigger, and we can all recognize it.
And it's interesting. So about a year and a half ago, we launched a program that was, I used the exact same term internally of education as a service to build the case for it, because my faculty thought we were crazy at the time. We took our executive education portfolio, which is modularized, right? If you look at any business school's executive education portfolio, there's each week basically in that is a module, right? And we said, what would we do for our degree students if it was education as a service? And the answer is you give them access to it, right? And so we said, okay, for any alum of our school, we'll give you lifetime tuition-free access to anything in that portfolio, right? Now, the economics of that get pretty interesting really fast, right? But the way that the turning point in the conversation was when we said, think of tuition as a subscription.
Yep, right.
that's paid up front. And historically, we've thought of the alumni community as the thing that keeps going, right? But now the education as a service is something that can keep going as well, right? And I think what you'll see over the next 5 to 10 years, and certainly even sooner, is schools getting pretty innovative about what that education as a service model looks like, and how we deliver that around the world in really interesting ways.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
And so your classmates will be the cohort that you're with, increasingly as we're working to try to harness technology to have your learning not just be the 2 years you're with us, but beyond. Think about, what is the nature of the alumni community? As Doug said, all of us have wonderful alumni communities in different ways. Be very thoughtful and intentional about what kind of a learner you are. You know, you're a bee, and what's the kind of flower that each of us offers in terms of the nature of what our alumni networks are. That's going to be increasingly kind of the asset and part of what you're joining when you join one of our schools.
Now, Doug, one thing you said to me earlier was how you are essentially using virtual reality to bring experiential learning to your school.
Right.
Talk a little bit about this Cameroon idea that you mentioned to me earlier.
Yeah, so we've been looking at virtual reality, AR, IA, a lot of different sort of emerging technologies. So with virtual reality, this year we hired a faculty member who's computer science background just to do virtual reality for us. And so our first venture into that was your boss is giving you an assignment, and it's to go to Cameroon and set up a base to sell a healthcare device. You've got to decide to whether to sell it through hospitals, pharmacies, or directly to the consumer. Now, I would love to be able to take all my students, send them to Cameroon for 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years to have that experience. That doesn't exactly work. So what we decided to do was to do it with virtual reality. We had a full-time MBA student from Cameroon whose family was in the healthcare business. He and 2 of our faculty went over spring break and filmed what is sort of like a short movie, if you will. When you put the goggles on, you are in the Cameroon airport, and there are a lot of people there to help you. The entire thing is filmed with actual Cameroon people, and you have all sorts of choices. It's a massive tree, if you will, decision tree of places you can go. And we're using that in the fall in our classes. Again, it's an experience of going abroad and making choices. One of the best things that we've gotten so far that I enjoy is you can't do very much business until you get a license to do business in Cameroon. That requires you to go to the government office to get the license. When you go to the government office, there's an official sitting there in a little official uniform. There's a woman sitting across the desk. There's a little fan above you going whack, 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 whack. There's flies flying all around, and there's sort of a dirty floor. And you sit in a plastic chair, sort of like you're sitting in. And after a while, you have a question comes up which says, would you like to expedite this process? If you ask the government official, how can I expedite this process? And we didn't know because what the government official would say, but the government official's answer to that was, are you offering me a bribe? Now, we've tried to teach, all of our schools have, ethics forever. Now, ethics doesn't go over very well because I'm ethical. I don't know about these other guys. Okay, but I know I don't need to be taught ethics. So ethics is a hard thing to teach because it's hard to make it clear to someone that's a need. But I can tell you when you have the goggles on and you're forced to give an answer to that question, the blood pressure's going up, the heart rate's going up, the palms are going to get sweaty because you don't know exactly what to answer. And you have about 9 responses you can give, everywhere from no to yes, what is the appropriate bribe, to a lot of choices in between. Now, since some of you actually might come to our school and might use this, I'm not going to tell you what the answers are. But that will be the most advanced, best learning I think we've ever done of how one would respond with the possibility of a bribe in a third world African country in a real world situation. And after you have that experience, we'll have coaches, we'll be able to track what everyone's doing. We'll be able to know what in a real life situation, not anticipating you'd find yourself in a bribe offering, what everyone did. I think then we can take the goggles off and say, okay, so we know 75% of you did this, 15% of you did this, 10% of you did this. Let's talk about what those choices were and why you did it. And I think that's just an example of where you can take technology. We're also building one out for how do you work if you have a team and you have a couple of people who are in conflict with each other. How do you let somebody go when the budget has to be cut? All those experiences for everybody sitting up here that we've had to do this, we had to do it with live bullets. And the first time you did it may not have been pretty. It'd be a lot better to practice doing those things before you actually have to do it with live human beings. So that's just a little bit of the kind of things we're looking at there. But technology, I think, gives us tremendous opportunities to try new things out.
It's very impressive. Let me offer one example. I think we all have some examples. I'll offer one. So at Cornell campus, we are doing a lot of hackathons these days. And so the idea is that you come up with a multidisciplinary problem which has no fixed answer, with some background material given to student body ahead of time. Students read, get ready, and then they get about 24 to 48 hours to solve the problem. So, and then present the results to some jury of executives for a grand prize of some sort. So this semester, we had a project with Pepper, the robot. How many of you have seen Pepper? Any of you seen the Pepper? It's a humanoid, really cute-looking robot. It's about this big. And it's created by SoftBank Robotics. And it can gauge human emotions, and it can react accordingly. And if you think about the economy we live in service economy, everywhere you got to interact with somebody else. So SoftBank actually brought 3 of the Pepper robots on campus. And students put together proposals, then they got a chance to interact with the robot, and then create the final project. So the learning from that was amazing. We got more than 200 students from MBA programs, engineering, undergraduate, in cross-disciplinary teams, and they participated. And the feedback is that this was great, but we want more of it. So find other companies who are doing these type of innovative things using different types of technology, from 3D printing to digital media to whatever, but create those projects. That's right. So that's our big initiative. How do we take these ideas and make them integral part of our curriculum? And we'll see more of that all across, is my guess.
What's kind of interesting in this discussion is, in the old days, when you would talk about business education, you would talk about accounting, finance, marketing, strategy, operations. We haven't even hardly heard those terms today. And it just shows you how the MBA has evolved and is actually becoming more pragmatic. You recall that in the 50s, with the Carnegie and Ford Foundation reports that questioned the legitimacy of business school as an intellectual endeavor, there was this move toward scholarship and deep research. And I think probably, maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree, that the pendulum swung too far toward esoteria. And now there's a swing more toward pragmatic experiential learning, entrepreneurship, which is more often than not taught by clinical professors who don't have PhDs, because you don't get a PhD in entrepreneurship. Are we seeing a more pragmatic development of the MBA and the experience?
That's a great question. I would answer it by saying I'll use Doug's nice frame. We're focusing more on application and experience rather than just the learn and imagine. Mm-hmm. Be clear, the companies that you are at now and the companies you want to go to post-MBA, they are still fully going to expect that you know all the accounting, all the finance, all the marketing, all the economics, all the kind of content that business programs have had in the past. We have one of the most extensive and rigorous core curriculums that's out there at Tuck. And that's because our companies, our students value that baseline of knowledge. So the thing about services and the enhancement of the quality of services that you expect as students with the large investment you're making, and the companies that want to hire you, all of that is still there. What I think is hopefully increasingly differentiated and of value to you, the students, is on John's good question. It's about, but how is that being applied? And how can we make sure in the time that you're with us on campus, you're really having an advantage to use that? So I'll add another example. We have long really valued our core at the Tuck School. Over the past several months, a big curriculum initiative we had was we reached out to some alums who do simulation exercises, not Cameroon, but they do a lot of other cool things. And we said, come spend time with us and all of our faculty that teach in each of our core classes. And let's sit down and ascertain what's, say, the 3 most important elements of every single core class at Tuck that students should really be able to apply and use. And as good as the learning has been in the past, we realized if we have a clear curricular experiential exercise that allows them to integrate that and apply that that could be something that at the right point in the time that you're with us in our trusting learning community, you can really kind of apply that and figure out what to do. So we created as a clean tech company, and then our alum went back and said, geez, there's a lot of things here. This is a long list. I'm not sure we can actually create the kind of exercise that we're thinking of. But they managed to. We ran 2 beta tests with about 30 MBA candidates this spring, a couple of them. First one was great on the marketing and some of the strategy things. On some of the accounting and finance, it wasn't quite where we needed it to be. Went back, did another iteration. This is now, and then our faculty were very excited about it. So to pull things out of the usual traditional discipline silos and have there be an experiential applied focus. This is now a new class. We're going to be offering it in the fall. And I will tell you, the number of our alumni and our advisory boards that say, because there was something like that. We had a professor many years ago that ran something like this. It used to be called Tycoon. Now, in today's day and age, Tycoon is probably not the right frame, and so we're not going to call it that. But the number of alums remember that as one of the most amazing application exercises of what they were able to do. They're going to come back and participate. We have faculty that want to have teams, so we got to figure out. We're going to run it in the fall as a 4-credit class, and it's going to be a capstone that really reinvigorates the second year, bridging from the first year in their internships. So it's not that we're not doing the accounting and the finance and the marketing. That's all there. You deserve that as students. We want to make sure that we're bringing it alive in as vibrant of ways that relate to technology, that relate to globalization, that relate to all these kind of forces that we're talking about.
Yeah, just a quick underscore, because when you go to information sessions for any of our schools, we will bring alums into those information sessions. And some of you will ask, what was the single best experience you had? And 80% of them will answer some experiential learning.
That's right.
Right, that they've had at our school. It's really deep, it's really formative stuff.
Well, and the data are pretty clear that the best way to learn to use and apply that core content, that core knowledge, is to actually put it into an experience and practice.
That's right.
And we would much rather create an environment that is, one, a safe environment, and two, some teams, some people are going to be successful in that experience and some are not. And that's where we can really accelerate your learning, growth, and development, is actually putting that together and then asking, well, let's unpack why, right? And doing that once you're out of the MBA program, the stakes are a little higher, right? So we'd much rather create those experiences within the educational environment. But the data are very clear. The best way to learn that content is actually through experience. You have to know it, but then you have to be able to use it.
I want to talk a little bit about the stereotype of the MBA. There are people in the audience who come from, let's say, consulting or finance, and they know this may not be true, but there are probably many people from non-traditional backgrounds who are just getting interested or comfortable with the notion of going to a business school. And for them, they may have an idea of what an MBA is like. And that idea may not be all that positive. You know, a couple months ago, there was a publication of a book called The Golden Passport. And it was about the Harvard Business School primarily. But the conclusions of the author is that essentially Harvard generates sharp-elbowed students who are only interested in making a quick buck, who are focused on only the short term, who follow the so-called shareholder model of management, in which you're only responsible to your investors, not your society, not community, not your employees, not even your customers. And MBAs were responsible for the economic implosion in 2008. What's your take on why there is this endless group of naysayers about the MBA and about business schools? Rich, what's your take on that?
Good question, very real question. Look, I mean, there are examples out there of people gone bad or people gone awry, and sometimes those are MBAs, and when they are, it's called out, right? But I think as empiricists, we really have to look at the whole field, and you have to ask, look, what are the people that are advancing society in many, many different ways? What are we doing as schools to make sure that the people that are coming through our schools are just as responsible as we can make them in the largest sense of that term, right? So you can imagine, none of us would admit somebody where we're really directly concerned about their character, or there's something in the application or the information we have where it's like, no, we wouldn't do that. But I guess where it starts to cut is where you start to say, look, this is a person, we just interviewed this person, and this person is, possibly the ends justify the means kind of a person. There's nothing in the file, but this person's really aggressive. Maybe even mercenary, and they have a 790 GMAT and a 3.8 GPA. Do you let them in? That's more of the gray area. And at Haas, we've taken a real strong stand around some principles that, if you've done any reading about Haas, things like confidence without attitude. Look, the world needs all kinds. We know that. But this is not a school that wants to admit people who are confident with arrogance. It's just not kind of where we come from. It's not the leadership style we occupy. And so do we look at that person who's sort of, at the end, it's like you got to say no every time. Really, if you're going to really play the hand, you got to say no every time to somebody that you're really concerned about, even though there's no direct data in the file.
I read the book. It didn't ring true with my experience. I haven't been to Harvard, so I won't render judgment. I wore these gaudy socks, though, in case this topic came up. Because these socks actually represent something about our community at UNC. And they're quite important. And I think every school, and all these schools I know here have this, we have core values, and we do a lot about our core values. Our core values are excellence, leadership, and then the last three I want to talk about: integrity, community, and teamwork. And we spend a lot of time talking about those. These socks are by a textile company in North Carolina. Now, that's an extinct industry, okay? Used to be the largest employer in North Carolina. It's beginning to make a comeback because we're getting advanced manufacturing in this country. And so this is a small local textile company that began to produce socks. They have our school colors. But we're selling these socks, and we're selling scarves. If you want some, I can get them for you. The purpose for this is all of these goes to proceeds that we raise for children health issues in Chapel Hill. And this is an activity that's involved the students and the faculty and the staff at our school. And so one of the things we try to talk about is we're part of a community. And we do enjoy an extraordinary opportunity. If you're in this room, if you're watching this on a web or something, you've been blessed by all sorts of extraordinary opportunities. If you're able to go and get an MBA from a leading school, your future is paved with extraordinary opportunity. But you need to think about, there's children today, there's little boys and little girls that have incredible health issues. And that starts to put things into perspectives. There's people in this country whose industry has been wiped out, such as textile workers. This starts to put things into perspective. So I think that at least at many of our schools, and this is why the book didn't ring true with my experience, I think the MBA, sure, we're trying to teach people how to make wise decisions, to be important leaders. Many of us have worked in organizations where our boss wasn't the best person in the world. I always think I have a reason to get up in the morning because I don't want to have bad bosses. And we also need to have better communities. So we talk a lot about our graduates' job is to go back and make their families, their communities, their companies, and their countries better. If that kind of thing is what we're achieving, the MBA and the business school in general is doing a great social good.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to add just very briefly on this. These are great examples, by the way. Thanks for sharing that. At Cornell, in response to these type of stories, the one you mentioned, and also from the organic process, in the last decade, we have made public engagement the top priority of the university. If you go to cornell.edu, there are a few things which all universities have, and one thing which is different is public engagement. And the part of the reason was that I think there was a sense that with every passing year, in all the elite universities, not just to name one, students are increasingly getting away from the real world. And so we have to bring back real world into the curriculum, into the faculty role, and so on. So we basically have this big effort that within the next 10 years, almost every single student who graduates with a degree from Cornell will have significant touch point with public engagement. So what do we mean by that? That will mean there could be projects, there could be cases, there could be reading materials, there could be experiential learning, there could be public service. Some aspect of that has to be there. And I think this is a very healthy development. And guess what? Actually, MBA students are some of the biggest users of this program. That's one thing we are seeing. In one of the 3 schools in our college, new S.C. Johnson College of Business, Dyson School, they don't offer MBA, but they have a nice tagline. I want to just mention that. Their tagline is, "Our business is a better world." And they live by it, and in fact, they are encouraging the other 2 schools to also think in those ways. So when we developed our core values, when the new college was created, we have community, we have engagement, we have impact. All of these are core values coming up, and I assume it'll be something similar in others as well.
I'd encourage each of you here to think about our world. The forces of technology, of globalization, they're amazing. And yet they don't benefit every single worker and community and company. And our mission at Tuck is we educate wise leaders to better the world of business. And that word wisdom we've chosen very purposely because we aspire to have leaders who, through business and the good that it tends to create, are going to address some of the challenges that our country and all the countries around the world face. So in response to John's question, one of the most joyous days at Tuck is graduation. And at graduation, our most senior faculty member every year reads one of the most telling passages from Edward Tuck when he made the donation to his college roommate, then the Dartmouth president, Tucker, in founding the Tuck School. And the quote that everyone likes to remember with purpose in the spirit of this is that altruism is the highest form of egoism. So think about what you've had great opportunities and success thus far in life. What is it you want to do with an MBA to allow you to speak to these opportunities that the world presents?
Yeah. I mean, there's something about the schools that are represented here today. There's a common thread that I think you're seeing and hearing across each of us. Our mission is to create a better world through business, and we happen to do that in 2 ways: ideas and people. We are looking to generate ideas that transform how people think, how they act, how they connect with the world, how they use business to create a better world. And then we're looking to develop people, you all, who have the character and capability to go do that. And the world needs us today more than ever. If you look at, for example, the United Nations, the 17 global development goals that the United Nations has, from eradicating poverty to job growth, sustainability, any of those. None of those grand global challenges of our generation will be solved without business and the private sector being at the table contributing solutions, working with government, working with NGOs, across national borders, across cultural borders. None of those challenges will be solved. And those challenges are our challenges, right? And so we need ideas and we need people who really are committed to transforming the world through business. And it bleeds through everything that we're doing across all of our institutions. And so I'm really proud of the work that we are doing as business schools and trying to work with our students to create a better world.
I just have to say, over all the years I've been covering business schools and visiting schools, and I've visited all of your schools more than one time, I have never really met a master of the universe. I've met awfully nice, eclectic, bright, ambitious people, ambitious not only for themselves, but for a greater good. Mm-hmm. And that's really true.
Yeah.
So we have a little time left, and I want to see if anyone in the audience might have a question for our deans. Go ahead. Tell us who you are.
My name's Alex. I'm a PwC associate. Mm-hmm. I just had a question for you. I noticed that most business schools and actually most business literature is shifting toward, business is change for, like, as a way for society to improve for good. And you're pumping that into talent pipelines for companies. But I've also worked for other consulting firms that see the profit margin being like the most important thing. How are you changing your companies you partner with to change the way they think instead of being with only the shareholder thought, like I'm only here to make money for people and I'm only here to help my shareholders? How are you changing those people who came from that traditional background?
Can I try to answer that one?
Please.
If I ask any of you in this room, why do you want to get an MBA? I don't think many people will say, just because I want to make money. You all have a passion. You will say, I want to do this. And that this, if it can make a lot of money for me, great. At least it should give me enough so that I can have a good and happy life. So that's how we talk about it. And I think you can have other people's answer that in a similar way.
I think if you love what you do, the money, the finances that you need to thrive as a human being for you and your family kind of comes. And then for the companies then, I imagine all of our schools, there's a similar gestalt of the companies with whom we build vibrant relationships for recruiting and other ways to enrich our curriculum are ones that reflect the values about which we're speaking.
And some of the things that we communicate in our curricula, for example, is just one example. But 25 years ago, 30 years ago, if you'd asked the CEO of, name your company, Coca-Cola, what's your water footprint? That person might have said, here are my factories, here are the pipes that go into my factories, here's my water footprint. And if somebody had said, what about the sugar cane? The CEO would have said, not my responsibility. That's not an acceptable answer today. And just understanding how management has changed that way is really important for our students. So we tell those stories to the students, among many other things, to help them see the frame more widely.
Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead. Tell us where you work.
My name is Jack Lin. I'm a third-year medical student at University of Iowa. And so thank you guys all for having this discussion in front of us today. And I have a question about the technology part of the discussion. I see that in terms of technology in business school, it's a little similar to the technology innovation in healthcare in that we're providing lots of more values in terms of the service we're providing people. But at the end of the day, would it be the same way as healthcare where technology sort of falls into the background and you become more outcome-based in terms of measuring your productivity or how much impact or what scale the graduates on the business schools are doing? And in that, how do you see the schools in sort of measuring that outcome or using technology to do so?
Great, I'll jump in if I may, because I think, at the end of the day, the technology is enabling, and we should never forget that, right? We have other goals, right? Just a small story that hits exactly at your question. Many of our faculty, when we first started doing online classes, the first thing a course designer, which we don't traditionally have, right? We send a course designer into a faculty member to help design the online course, and the first question of the course designer is, what are the course goals? What are the learning objectives? And for a lot of our faculty, it's kind of like, never kind of asked myself that question. Now the syllabi have, obviously their learning goals, but it's just not the question that faculty were asking themselves. So I think the technology is helping us ask better questions of ourselves. It's, what do we want to have happen in this experience? What are the 5 transformations we're most proud of as deans? And I'm a finance faculty member. I would never answer that question by saying, wow, they can really price American options. I mean, I want them to be able to do that. But it's really more about identity change. It's like this person came in thinking they do that, and they left thinking I do that. What's that worth? And so we're getting better. The technology is helping us ask better questions about the true outcomes.
A corollary that could happen in education that there are tea leaves that would suggest it's moving in this direction, but certainly has happened in healthcare, is it's become so outcome objective focused in healthcare that the measurement system that's been built up around that, largely driven by the insurance industry, right? So there's some external body that is impacting and influencing what you're feeling, right? In your daily life as a physician. My wife is you, just furthering your career. There is a conversation among business schools and our accreditation bodies and things of that sort around how do you know they're learning, right? Can you actually document assurance of learning, right? Now, if we could all do that, right, as accurately down to the 100th decimal, right, we probably wouldn't be sitting here, right? And so that's a conversation that I think is, over the next handful of years, I think is going to evolve in the business education industry that, depending on how it goes, could lead to something like what you're experiencing. I hope it doesn't.
So let me just quickly react to this. There was a study published recently by Fortune magazine about the future of work. And what it said is that all our curriculums, not just business schools, but the entire university, is only training maybe less than a third of the professions which will exist in about 20 years from now. But there's a one common thread. Digital transformation will play a huge role in no matter what professions evolve. So what we can do is we can build the foundations. And that's what all of these ideas about technology and experiential learning is about, is that you have the core ingredients to be ready for the work, whatever they may be, in 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Technology has come up a lot. Think about technology like the lights in this room. I think that there's a lot of evidence. We're at such an early day, if it's the baseball metaphor again, and we haven't even thrown the opening pitch maybe, for how, just like electricity 100 plus years ago transformed every single business and industry and the lives of people all around the planet, this access to information, we're in such early days about this. None of us and our faculty know all the answers, but it's the orientation around how to think and ask the right questions that we're moving towards with gusto and excitement, whether it's in medical education, business education, or all the points of contact.
Okay, let me ask the last question with gusto and excitement. What are you doing to make sure that your MBAs are not replaced by robots in 10 years? Rich?
Well, I think, we all deliver a lot of content knowledge, the fundamentals. I think more and more we're thinking about sort of what are the cognitive skills, kind of the integrative thinking, the critical thinking, the systems thinking, the design thinking, and those are things that are more robust. And then at the top level, we're all delivering identity change. We're helping people see futures in themselves that will give them that kind of adaptability when the time comes.
Doug?
You know, it's funny, you asked that question. Last year, I got asked that question by a prospective student, and I went around to alumni groups saying that was the smartest question I got asked the whole year. Because I think that is the question of our age. I think it's the question for everybody. I don't think we're doing much. And I'll just say that as a world, because that's how critical I think the question is. I believe we are talking about that. And we're talking about it in our classes, and we're encouraging our students to talk about it. But I think the question is so overwhelming, I don't think we know how to wrestle with that question. But I do think that figuring out a way to think about what is essentially human is the most important question of our age right now. Because I think if the machine can do it, the machine will do it. And so we have got to figure out, and I sort of say this in this existential kind of human race. We've got to figure out what is essentially human and work on that. Because I do talk to our students a lot about if your job can be eliminated, it will be eliminated. Not because people are evil, not because they don't like you, but because that's just where things are going.
Right?
So I'm an optimist about this. I think it's a great opportunity for us all, right? I mean, with every major technological revolution, work has changed fundamentally. I mean, just 100 years ago, 80% of population around the world used to work in farms. Now it's probably less than 5% if you look at global, maybe even less than 1% right now. What are all those other people doing? They figured out things to do. And I think, when the factories started coming along, majority of population around the world used to work in manufacturing. World is a service economy now, by the way. Even China and India are service economy because more % of people in services than manufacturing. So this is the next logical step. I think human mind is very creative. We just have to give it the right tools and figure out things to do. We have to take care of each other. Yeah, robot can do surgery, but somebody on the other end has to keep telling the robot how to figure things out and come up with new ideas, and that's what curriculums do. So I'm optimist.
I'm also an optimist. I'm a huge Tigger. We at Tuck are teaching you how to ask questions. When I speak of wisdom, what is the most scarce resource for the CEOs and all other leaders on the planet is their capacity to learn. Great leaders are great teachers are great learners, and learning often starts from asking questions. And in particular, the question, why? The most centered individuals and organizations on the planet, they don't talk about what they do or how they do it. They talk about why they do it. So we focus more and more on question asking.
Yeah, I think that's critical. In the early stages of the Industrial Revolution, there were groups of people that went around trying to destroy the machines, right? Because they were displacing the work that they had been doing all of their lives for generations. And we certainly have people in our world, forget education, just our world, right, who is essentially trying to do the same thing, right? And the technology is evolving faster than any of us can actually even comprehend, right now. And there are groups of people who are trying to destroy the machines to preserve the life as we know it. And that is a futile endeavor, right? And so what we need to do, and you hear examples of that across our schools, is embrace the technology, whether it's the robot or the virtual reality or whatever it may be, to figure out novel ways to deliver a high-impact educational experience to all of you. And then what you've also heard is then create experiences. We are essentially becoming an experience-driven industry in many ways, because it's the experience that becomes the identity workspace within which you come to not only learn a few nuggets of content, which you will increasingly be able to do not needing us, right? But the experience that we offer is that workspace within which you are able to take that content and use it not only to pursue your own aspirations, but to have the impact in the world that you want to have. And if we are able to create many of the experiences that we are aspiring to today, I think the future of business education is brighter than ever. And I, too, am an eternal optimist, and unapologetically so.
Well, I want to thank all of our panelists for providing a robot-free future for our aspirants out there.
They'll be our friends.
Yes. Scott, Matt, Ruit, Doug, and Rich, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.